So in the previous video, we learned to use the git push command to convert, or to copy I should say, the contents of our local repository to a remote repository, in this case the one on GitHub. But we now need to talk about the pull command. So a good idea to demonstrate is we're going to make a simple change in our GitHub repository, then pull that change into the local repository. Now if you remember earlier, when creating our GitHub repository, we didn't add a README file. We actually skipped that part. So this is the perfect opportunity for us to create a README file now in GitHub, then pull that down and then synchronize our local repository with this remote counterpart on GitHub. So let's actually scroll down now and add a README, and we can see that there's an option here on the screen, the bottom right, where we can add a README. So we'll click on add a README, and we get some basic information showing on the screen there. Now, you can see there that at the end, the readme.md has got a file extension of .md, and that's created automatically by GitHub, or the recommended file is created automatically, and that means it's a markdown file. Now, Markdown is a writing tool which we can use to format simple text file using normal punctuation syntax. And that means that we can easily perform formatting options such as converting plain text to italic, bold, create headings, those sorts of things. Now, obviously, a detailed treatment of Markdown syntax is beyond the scope of the course. So what we're going to do is just write some simple text in our README file and format them with Markdown syntax to give you a bit of a flavor of Markdown. So let's start. We can see that we've got 2 lines added automatically for us, and I'm not going to change those. So let's actually just try something on the third line there. So we're going to put hash hash. This is our first README file, and again, it doesn't really matter what's in there. The point is, exercise is we're just going to see how the git pull command works. And the 2 hashes is for our second level heading. And we can click on preview at any time just to see what it's going to do. And you can see there that we had the git bootcamp, our test GitHub repository, and this second level heading is because I've used the hash hash there. So I'll go back to editing the file again. So let's add another line now. And let's try typing, we are about to attempt using the, and then I'm going to put 2 asterisks, pull command, and another 2 asterisks. So we're surrounding the pull command text with asterisks, with 2 asterisks in this lecture. And by doing that, that should make it bold. So let's have a look and see that it did that. You can see the pull commands in bold there. And we're going back to editing a file. Let's just do a few more lines, maybe just one more line. And let's finish it with a single asterisk. So let's get started. And ending that with an asterisk as well. And that should make the text italic. All right, you can see, so let's get started is showing there. All right, I'll just put another space there. So again, we can see what it looks like. So let's get started. All right, pretty basic, but that's right. I can scroll down there now, and you can see that down the bottom, we've got an option there. We've got a commit new file, create readme.md, and we can add an optional extended description. So let's just add a description to that. And let's put something, test commit directly to the master branch from GitHub, just so we know where it came from GitHub. And we can see we've got options down the bottom there, which we're not going to change to the default. We're going to commit directly to the master branch. All right, so let's click on now commit new file. After a short pause, you can see just now create readme.md, and we've got this readme.md which I can click, and that's obviously got the text that we've just added. All right. Another thing I want to point out now that this is showing 8 commits. In the previous video it was showing 7, and really that's just a sign that our remote repository commit history has just got updated, which we would expect, and we click on that because of course we've just added the readme file. And you can see there, create readme 30 seconds ago. All right. So now that we've done that, let's minimize this browser and go back to the command line and try pulling this information. All right, so I'm going to open a terminal window, open the shell, and I'm going to go to the folder, main folder that we've been doing anytime we've used the terminal, repos home, and what we're going to do, we're going to go back to our converted Git repository that we're working on in the previous video. And all we need to do now is just type git space pull. Press enter. And you can see that we've got some output there. It's total 3 delta 1 and it's actually showing us here that it's accessing it from the GitHub repository called git-bootcamp, which is from user Tim Bachalka from the origin master, as you can see there. And it also even shows us the file readme.md, 1 file change, 6 insertions. So very similar output to what we got with the git push command. The difference here is that git is now busily unpacking, not compressing, the files that are coming from GitHub, because obviously the files were compressed at the GitHub end, sent to us, and we're unpacking that information. You can see it up here. Instead of compressing it, we're unpacking the object that was sent to us so we can ultimately be added to our local repository. Now, you don't really need to worry about much of that. The important information here is this updating part, and you may recognize this 878DB63. That's been used in the course previously. That's a particular commit, and that's been added. It's really the commit ID range that's involved here. So master, where it's got master, then it's got this dash greater than sign, and then origin/master. Well, master refers to the remote master branch, and origin/master is the remote reference. So in our local repository, which represents the remote master. So Git's saying that due to the pull command being invoked, the head's been updated or moved, and we've got this a new commit that's been added to our local repository, which should mirror the commit history that we've got or that we had in the GitHub account. So let's actually confirm that this has actually worked. We'll do an ls command just to see whether that file's there. And there's the readme.md showing. And obviously I can take a look at that. And that's the code that I typed in earlier in this video. So that's working okay. And we could do a git log. And you can see now in our local repository, we've got the commit history that's come across from GitHub. And that was the one that I added directly, test commit directly to the master branch from GitHub. All right, I'll just quit out of that. Now, just before I finish this video, there's a couple of important things that I'd like to mention. Now, in the real world, it's very seldom for changes to be made directly on GitHub, as we did there when we added the readme.md file here. I did that just to keep things simple. In a real world, this change would probably have been committed by someone else who had access to this repository. So in other words, they would have cloned the repository initially on their local computer, made changes, and then pushed that change up to GitHub. Then when you did the git pull command, you'd be getting their changes back. But for simplicity, I just created a file on GitHub by using the GitHub interface directly. And secondly, it's always best practice to make sure that you do a git pull before you do a git push in a real world team development scenario, because there's always a possibility, if you've got multiple people accessing a repository, that someone's contributed some change to the central remote repository, and you don't want to be getting into some sort of conflict scenario. So it's always a good idea to do a git pull to make sure you've got the very latest version of the code before you attempt to push your changes back to the remote repository. All right, so let's move on now to the next video. And in that video, we're going to talk about forking a GitHub repository, what that is and how to do it. I'll see you in the next video.